Stories circulating after Billy Graham's death in 2018 often claim that previously unseen journals, letters, and private notes were discovered in his study in North Carolina, allegedly revealing a more complex inner life than the public ever saw. These narratives describe a figure who, while known globally as a confident evangelist and spiritual leader, may have privately wrestled with doubt, regret, and the pressures of political and cultural influence. In these accounts, the contrast between public certainty and private reflection becomes the central theme, suggesting that even the most recognizable religious voices carry internal struggles that are rarely shared openly. However, it is important to understand that much of this material exists more in the form of commentary, interpretation, and dramatized retellings, rather than verified revelations from authenticated personal documents. Billy Graham himself published autobiographical reflections during his lifetime, and his family and foundation have maintained extensive archival material, but sensational claims about shocking discoveries are often amplified through online storytelling rather than historical documentation. Still, the enduring interest in these narratives reflects something real: the public's fascination with the hidden emotional lives of influential figures. Graham's legacy, already vast due to his global ministry, becomes even more compelling when viewed through the lens of imagined private struggle, where faith, leadership, and personal limitation intersect in complex ways. Childhood and early formation in rural North Carolina. Billy Graham's early life in North Carolina is consistently described across biographies as formative in shaping his discipline, worldview, and sense of purpose. Raised on a dairy farm near Charlotte, he grew up in a household where routine labor defined daily life. Milking cows before and after school, managing farm responsibilities, and adhering to a structured family environment instilled in him a strong work ethic that would later influence his ministry. His childhood was not marked by religious intensity in a formal sense, but rather by a general cultural Christianity common in the rural American South. Like many teenagers of his era, he was more engaged in ordinary interests such as sports and social life than theological study. Baseball in particular played a significant role in his early ambitions, and there was a time when a professional athletic path seemed more likely than a religious calling. Family discipline also shaped his moral outlook. One frequently retold anecdote from his youth involves his father enforcing a negative experience with alcohol in an attempt to instill caution and personal conviction. Whether interpreted as strict parenting or formative discipline, such experiences contributed to Graham's later emphasis on restraint, moral clarity, and personal responsibility. These early years did not yet point toward global influence, but they laid the groundwork for a personality shaped by structure, endurance, and an emerging openness to spiritual transformation. Conversion experience, and the emergence of a calling. A defining moment in Billy Graham's life occurred during his teenage years when he attended a revival meeting led by evangelist Mordecai Ham. Initially hesitant and somewhat resistant to religious persuasion, Graham was influenced by social pressure and family encouragement to attend. It was during this event that he reportedly experienced a deeply emotional conversion, which he later described as a turning point in his understanding of faith and purpose. This moment is often framed in biographies as the beginning of his lifelong commitment to Christian evangelism. Rather than a gradual intellectual shift, Graham's transformation is portrayed as a decisive spiritual awakening that redirected his ambitions entirely. Following this experience, he began to view ministry not as an abstract interest but as a calling that required full dedication. Despite this shift, his early spiritual journey was not without uncertainty. Like many young converts, he navigated questions about doctrine, identity, and the practical meaning of faith in everyday life. These formative tensions helped shape his later preaching style, which emphasized clarity, urgency, and accessibility rather than academic theology. His decision to pursue ministry eventually led him to religious education institutions, where he refined his preaching skills. Over time, what began as a personal experience of conviction evolved into a public mission that would eventually reach millions around the world. Early ministry struggles and development. Billy Graham's early ministerial years were marked by experimentation, adjustment, and institutional challenges. After his conversion and initial theological training, he attended several Bible-focused educational environments, including institutions that varied widely in strictness and doctrinal emphasis. These settings exposed him to differing interpretations of Christian teaching and required him to navigate complex expectations about preaching style and personal conduct. At times, Graham struggled with rigid academic or religious environments that did not align with his developing communication style. He was more effective in dynamic, audience-driven settings than in strictly formal theological contexts. This tension eventually shaped his identity as a preacher who prioritized engagement with ordinary people over scholarly debate. During this period, he also developed early connections with youth evangelism movements, which provided him with platforms to speak to larger and more diverse audiences. These opportunities revealed his natural ability to communicate in a direct and emotionally resonant way, which became a defining characteristic of his later crusades. However, success was not immediate or guaranteed. Like many young ministers, he faced uncertainty about direction, financial stability, and long-term impact. These formative struggles contributed to his resilience and willingness to adapt, qualities that would later prove essential as his ministry expanded internationally. Rise to global evangelism and mass influence. Billy Graham's rise to international prominence began in the late 1940s and accelerated rapidly through large-scale revival events. His early crusades demonstrated an unusual ability to draw massive crowds, combining preaching with music, testimony, and organized outreach efforts. One of the most significant turning points came with major revival meetings in the United States that attracted unprecedented attendance and media attention. As his reputation grew, Graham transitioned from regional evangelist to global religious figure. He founded organizations dedicated to supporting large-scale evangelistic work, which allowed his ministry to expand structurally and geographically. His approach emphasized simplicity of message, focusing on themes of faith, salvation, and personal transformation rather than complex theological systems. Internationally, his influence grew through crusades in Europe, Asia, and other regions, where audiences sometimes reached hundreds of thousands in a single event. His ability to communicate across cultural boundaries contributed to his reputation as a unifying religious voice during a period of global political tension. This expansion was not only spiritual but also organizational. Graham's ministry became one of the most recognized evangelical movements in the world, supported by media outreach and coordinated events. His rise reflected both personal charisma and a growing public appetite for large-scale religious experiences in the mid-20th century. Media expansion, technology, and crusade culture. As Billy Graham's influence expanded, he became one of the earliest religious leaders to fully embrace modern media. Radio programs, televised sermons, printed devotionals, and later satellite broadcasts allowed his message to reach audiences far beyond physical crusade venues. This strategic use of technology transformed his ministry into a global communication network. His televised and radio programs helped normalize the idea of religious broadcasting as a mainstream form of media engagement. Instead of limiting outreach to physical gatherings, Graham's team created systems that could distribute sermons widely and consistently. This approach significantly increased his visibility and reinforced his image as a global evangelist. Crusades themselves evolved into highly organized events combining music, stage design, crowd coordination, and carefully structured preaching. These gatherings were not spontaneous revivals but planned productions designed to maximize reach and emotional impact. The integration of technology also allowed Graham to respond to changing cultural conditions. As global communication advanced, his ministry adapted, ensuring that his message remained accessible in a rapidly modernizing world. This adaptability became one of the defining features of his long career. Political connections and the Nixon-era controversies. Billy Graham's relationships with political leaders, particularly U.S. President Richard Nixon, remain one of the most debated aspects of his legacy. Over several decades, Graham interacted with multiple administrations, offering spiritual counsel while also engaging in informal political discussions. His relationship with Nixon, however, became especially close and later controversial. During Nixon's presidency, Graham visited the White House multiple times and was involved in private meetings that blended spiritual encouragement with political conversation. He publicly supported aspects of leadership and participated in national ceremonies, reinforcing his status as a trusted religious figure within political circles. However, this proximity to political power later raised questions about boundaries between faith and governance. When the Watergate scandal emerged, Graham initially defended Nixon, but later expressed deep disappointment and emotional distress when evidence of wrongdoing became undeniable. Additional controversy surfaced years later through recorded conversations that included remarks considered inappropriate and offensive, which Graham later addressed with apology and clarification. These events complicated his public image, revealing the risks of close association between religious authority and political leadership, civil rights era tensions, and social engagement. Billy Graham's involvement in civil rights issues reflected both progressive actions and cautious limitations. In some instances, he took clear steps toward racial integration, such as refusing segregated seating at his crusades and publicly opposing racial division in religious gatherings. These actions positioned him ahead of some contemporaries in religious leadership. At the same time, his overall approach to civil rights was often described as moderate rather than activist-driven. He tended to emphasize spiritual transformation and unity through faith rather than direct political confrontation. This perspective placed him at odds with some civil rights leaders who favored more immediate and forceful systemic change. Graham's interactions with figures such as Martin Luther King Jr. reflected both mutual respect and philosophical differences. While he supported the idea of racial equality, he was sometimes criticized for not engaging more directly with political activism or protest movements. This balancing act between personal belief and public caution defined much of his civil rights era presence. His legacy in this area remains complex, combining meaningful steps toward inclusion with hesitation in fully aligning with activist strategies. Later years, health challenges, and evolving perspectives. In his later life, Billy Graham faced increasing health challenges, including neurological and physical conditions that limited his mobility and public appearances. Despite these difficulties, he remained mentally engaged with his ministry and continued to offer guidance through written reflections and occasional public statements. During this period, his theological tone became somewhat broader and more inclusive compared to his earlier years. He emphasized unity among Christian denominations and expressed a more open approach to differing interpretations of faith. This evolution was both praised and criticized, depending on theological perspective. Graham also became more reflective about his earlier life decisions, particularly his political involvement. He acknowledged areas where he believed he could have exercised greater caution or maintained clearer boundaries. This retrospective view contributed to a more nuanced understanding of his legacy. Even as his public activity decreased, his influence remained significant due to the global reach of his earlier work. His later years represented a transition from active evangelism to historical figure and moral commentator. Personal life, marriage, and private reflections. Billy Graham's marriage to Ruth Bell Graham played a central role in his personal stability and emotional life. Their partnership provided continuity throughout decades of intense travel, public attention, and organizational responsibility. Ruth was often described as a grounding presence who supported his ministry while maintaining her own spiritual independence. Their family life, while private, is frequently cited as an important foundation for Graham's resilience. Despite long periods of separation due to ministry demands, their relationship remained central to his identity. In various autobiographical reflections, Graham acknowledged moments of doubt, fatigue, and emotional burden, though these were typically framed within a broader narrative of faith and perseverance. His personal writings and interviews suggest a man who was aware of his limitations but committed to his calling. The balance between public responsibility and private life remained an ongoing theme throughout his career. While stories of hidden revelations often circulate in popular media, the more consistent historical picture is one of a public figure managing immense global responsibility while striving to maintain personal integrity. Conclusion and legacy of a global religious figure. Billy Graham's legacy is ultimately defined by his unprecedented global reach, his ability to communicate religious ideas to mass audiences, and his role in shaping modern evangelical Christianity. While popular narratives sometimes emphasize hidden journals or dramatic private revelations, the documented history of his life already contains significant complexity without requiring sensational additions. His ministry expanded across continents, adapting to technological change and political shifts while maintaining a consistent core message centered on faith and personal transformation. At the same time, his career intersected with political power, social change, and cultural conflict, creating a legacy that is both influential and debated. Rather than a simple story of triumph or controversy, his life reflects the broader reality of leadership at a global scale, where public influence, personal belief, and institutional responsibility constantly interact. His impact continues through organizations he founded, the millions influenced by his crusades, and the ongoing discussions about the role of faith in public life. Ultimately, Billy Graham remains a figure whose life is best understood not through sensational discoveries, but through the documented tension between conviction, responsibility, and human limitation that shaped his long and influential journey.